Okay, so now that is maybe being taped, if I remember to turn it off at the break, so that I didn't do that the last session, and we were up gossiping and talking to one another. It was all on the tape. I wasn't sure what we talked about. I think I revealed too much. And this is a little bit picking up from where we were last time. Here's a nice little pen. I'm going to draw a little something, a schema, and then keep referring to it in this chart. So, for instance, we read a lot of stuff, so we get a lot of outside information. It goes into our heads, all right? And we want to do something. We say, oh, I've read this, or I've heard, I've seen somebody. We get information. In the Christian circles, you get it from the Bible. There's the Bhagavad Gita. There's the Tao Te Ching. There's all kinds of things where you get something and it sort of grabs you and you want to do it. You want to act it out. So, and this is where all the action is going to be, in your body, you know. But what I say, in between all that is the will. And this is why meditation, I think, is so important. The more contemplative dimension of prayer, where you let go of focusing on your thoughts. You let go of speaking words. You let go of reading books. And you just try to detach. That's what methods are. Detachment from what's going on in your mind. But first of all, you got these thoughts in your mind and you want to go and do them. Act them out. Either with your mouth, with your eyes, with so on and so forth. But what I think is the matter is the will is always under repair. Okay? It's somewhat broken, which is why we want to do one thing, but we frequently do something else. And I think it's not because we don't know what to do, or we don't sort of want to do it, we can't get ourselves to do it. And what I think meditation works on is a repair job on the will, so that you can not only, you have a will that allows the energy that you're getting to move down into here so you can act, or so that it would work up in here with the way you speak. A simple example is someone says, I just read something about not being judgmental. I just love it. I don't want to be judged, and I don't want to judge other people. I'm going to be I'm going to stop judging, so on and so forth. And before you know it, within an hour, you just find yourself gossiping about the same person that you've been judging before. And you said, what happened? I had all these great intentions. Because wanting doesn't make it happen. They say, God, please help me to stop being judgmental. And it's, okay, God, now you're in charge. But there's no meditation. There has to be more than asking. There has to be an allowing something to happen in meditation. I'm going to get into what that is. Something happens in meditation that works on this part of ourselves so that we begin to let go of old behavior and new energy and new behavior comes in. And this is what is called a new creation. So you hear words like become a new creation. I think we hear that in Christian circles anyway. What you allow yourself is, I think in this kind of prayer, to become a new creation is a surrender. Well, that's a loaded word. A lot of people don't like that word because they've surrendered and they got nailed. So it doesn't work. They say, I don't want surrender. I said, well, let's look at it this way. It is a surrender, but in a safer way. You allow yourself to be found. To become a new creation, you allow, there's this self that there's this deeper self, okay? The deeper you, if you will. And it's the true you. It's the you that is the best that you can be. It's that new creation, but it's encrusted by bad habits, by culture, by media, by any number of things, by trying to fit in when you were growing up in school, trying to get this and get that, and adjusting yourself, and so on and so forth. And all that didn't work. That's often why people get involved in meditation if something's not working. So the meditation is often plan B or C. But whatever plan it is, by the time you get to it, you got a lot of woundedness and crustedness and so on and so forth. So you allow yourself to be found. Now think of this in terms of the initial idea for a lot of people in meditation is, what I want is to find God. And that I found that doesn't really work. People have gone on a lot of drugs to find God, and it didn't work. They had wild experiences, but it didn't work. Didn't change them for the better. So what you're doing in meditation is you stop looking. That's one of the things you let go of, finding God, and you let yourself be found. So one of the things that begins to happen in meditation, because really, if you get involved in deep meditation, the more contemplative dimension of prayer, it's mystical. What does that mean? It's unmediated. Unmediated experience of the power of the divine. That is, there's nothing in between you sitting in that experience. No thought gave it to you. You just kept letting go of thoughts, or letting go of focusing on them. You let go of words. You have a good feeling, okay, let it be. But if it leaves, it doesn't bother you. You're going to sit there for 30 minutes or 20 minutes, and your only practice in centering prayer, for instance, is to have a sacred word or notice your breath, so that you stop focusing on many things and you let yourself just be. Some people will say, I focus on one thing, like an icon or a picture or something. You could do it with yoga. As long as the pose, you're not so much thinking about the pose anymore, you just pose. But you get good enough so you don't even notice your body, what it's doing. It can happen all kinds of ways, but I find, for me anyway, it works just sitting quietly without trying to focus on thoughts. But it's unmediated, which is why organized religion doesn't like it. I come from a Roman Catholic background. We are hierarchical structure. We like the top to tell the bottom what to do, and the top says, we know, you don't, we tell you, you do. Contemplation says, there's no mediation. In other words, I don't need a pope, a bishop, a priest to tell me how to encounter the divine. And I don't need dogma. Well, that ain't going to work. So it's just not going to work. So that's what it is. It's unmediated. The book helps you. Friends help you. A methodology helps you. They all help you to become meditative. But the contemplative dimension is something that you're taken to by this God. And you let yourself be found, is more what I think the new creation is. So you are found. You might start out trying to find God, and what you try to do is be found, so that the true you, the you that God made, the you that's the best, the you that's really godly. In our tradition, we say we're all gods. The you that's godly, the divine of you, is discovered. And when it's discovered, you begin to live that way, little by little. You replace vice, bad habits, with virtue, good habits. So it's allowing yourself to be found, to be able to sit there and say, when you get up, oh, I was here all by myself, and I didn't think I was a jerk or a mess or put myself down or say all the things I should do and so on and so forth. Oh, it just felt good to be in my own skin. That's a pretty good feeling, to be okay in my own skin. So we begin to stop living self-creation. That's the sort of this outside stuff, or what's often called the false self. The self we've developed to get what we want or to avoid what we don't want in this world. And it's living the illusion of who I am. I'm not this person. And I spend so much time and energy trying to be this person so I can get this or avoid that. And we learn it in school as we're growing up. There's a school attached to the church I live in Boulder, Colorado. And you see these kids trying to fit in and be part of this group, and then this friend in the 4th grade is not their friend in the 5th grade, or early 4th grade, yes, or 6th grade, it's all different, and so on and so forth. And you just spend all kinds of time trying to be like everybody else, and eventually you start dressing like you say, well, okay, that's the group I want to be in. What do? I'll do what they do. I'll dress like they do. I'll go where they do. I'll do what they do. And the media wants this. They like it because they can sell more stuff. So you begin to shed this self-creation, if you will. You begin to shed the fantasies of the identities that you took on that really aren't truly who you are. They were the values of the culture in which you grew up, the values of the media. They were sort of given to you to make you feel important, safe, secure, helps your self-esteem, and so on and so forth. Keating talks all about those things in that particular book. So in our tradition, we say something like, in the Christian tradition that I know a little bit more about, we speak of Christ as the way, the truth, and the life. And a lot of people jump into, when they hear the word Christ, they either jump into or jump away from the dogma of Jesus of Nazareth as true God and true man. And, well, that is a dogma, that is a belief of my tradition, but I've never found anybody who's become very contemplative because they believe that dogma. I mean, I just never felt that was the energy that got them doing it. It was something else. It was something else. Because they would say Jesus is true God and true man, I want to be just like Jesus. All right, so here I'm going to act like Jesus, and I don't. I act like Peter. So I said, what happened? And I see, that was Peter. Peter said, the head said, yeah, I follow you, I'll die with you, I'll give my life with you. Where'd the body go? Ran away. He was a liar, a coward. But up here, I'm turned on by what you say, but I can't live it out. This is what was broken. It's what's broken in all of us. And it's, in our tradition, it's called, I look at it, we have a word, original sin. And basically, that's to do over and over the same thing you don't want to do. You keep repeating what you say you don't want to do. That's the original sin, because this is all broken. So, I think of Christ, in terms of what we're talking about, is the energy, the power of God that encapsulates itself in the human. And that's what each of us are. Again, my tradition, we say this, that we are all Christ. I see Christ in you. Do I see a Jewish man from Nazareth in you? No. What I see is this energy, this light. All right? So that's, and you begin to see the possibilities in another person, or actually the holiness in another person. And you begin to act differently towards them. And that comes out of that comes out of a deeper meditation, a more contemplative way, because what you feel is a sense of oneness. First of all, you feel okay with yourself. I feel comfortable in me. And that begins to help you you don't notice it. You don't get up there saying, well, I practiced meditation because I wanted to feel one with the world. I feel very few people say that. It is a sort of a gift that comes. You begin to connect with the world around you, but first you got to connect with this real you, and see the nonsense of the stuff that you've been living out. Both will come. Keating talks about unloading the unconscious. It's basically realizing, oh, here's why I'm acting the way that I am. And I can't stop it all by myself because I've tried to do that. But it seems in this meditation, I practice less my bad behavior. And I start practicing more the things I want to practice. I wonder how that happened, because I really wanted to, and I never could do what I wanted to do. And now I find myself doing what I wanted to do a few more times. Not perfectly, but a few more times. So we begin to shift in our whole attitude. So that's the truth of ourselves. So when we say in our scriptures, Jesus says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." This is the truth of who we are. And in my tradition, we connect to this Godness made human. But you notice that in deeper meditation, you don't even focus on that thought. That might be a start. There's no Christians to stop focusing on. They just let all that dogmatic stuff that helped them to maybe get started to let go. They're not trying to do dogma. It's not dogma. And I've met so many people that have dogma, but they don't know the truth of themselves. But they got dogma. They recite the creed every Sunday, then they go out in the parking lot and practically run one another over. So, and so on and so forth. They go for the treats afterwards and start complaining because somebody took all the donuts or whatever it is. It's just pettiness. So, a real conversion, if we use these same terms, conversion is to begin to entrust ourselves to this process, or sometimes says, entrust oneself to Christ, entrust oneself to the godly power that is in each one of us, especially in Jesus of Nazareth, but it's in each one of us too. He talks about I am one, we are one, in John's Gospel and so on and so forth. And it's just a lot of words, and to many people it's boring, it makes no sense until you experience that oneness. That's what he was talking about. That must be why he went out into the desert in the middle of the night. Well, he just got outside of town, just got quiet and still. We let go of this the illusion of our own self-importance. We are important, but the self-importance is this false self-importance. I'm an important, I've worked hard to become this important person. And I'm miserable. I'm unhappy. I'm unfulfilled. Something's missing. Those kinds of things. Or I'm still working at it, and it's getting to be just too much. I'm tired of being this, working on self-importance. I got to prove myself. I need more control. I need more prestige. I need more self-esteem. And what happens? You're always chronically disappointed because you can never live up to this whatever standard that has been set. It's just a feeble attempt at security, control, prestige. And Thomas Keating talks about those things. So what you begin to do, another way of looking at this is, because we talked about the sacred gaze. The sacred gaze is a way of God. I suddenly realize God is looking at me using this image, and I'm wonderful. God's in love with me. I'm lovable. And now I'm beginning to see myself through this other way. What somebody might feel, of course, is I feel pretty good inside myself. I feel comfortable inside my skin. I'm imperfect, but I'm loved. And I can be loving, and I feel better. And I'm giving you a schema for it, is that's experiencing yourself being seen through the eyes of God. That's the sacred gaze, the eyes of God looking at you. God doesn't have eyes, but just giving you that sense. So think of it as getting up in the morning and looking in a mirror. Okay, say, no, I don't want to do that. So I'll get up in the morning, look in the mirror, and said, you are an old, broken man. You are hopeless, Terry Ryan. Well, that's not a very good way to get into the day, is it? And to say, okay, I got to really fix myself up to face the world, because as I see me, because I'm looking at me with all my imperfections and so on and so forth. And what they're imperfections relative to what I consider perfect, you see. So there's this great effort to look younger because older in our culture is looked down upon. But that's our culture. There are other cultures in which being ancient there's nothing wrong with it. You're the wisdom figure in a lot of societies outside of the Western world. So it's not a universal. It's just our thing about being young looking. I might say, oh, you're so old. As if that's a curse. Your wrinkle, as if that's a curse. And I wouldn't look at myself and say, oh, you've got wisdom of years. That's not the first thought that may come to me. Wisdom of years. You have so much to offer the world. Go out there and be Christ for everybody. Okay? So, no, that's not what you get. So, but when God is the mirror, if you will, you begin to see yourself not with what culture would say is your imperfections. That becomes not even on the schema. You look at yourself and say, I am Christ. Would be what a Christian would. I am Christ. I am the Christ. I am one with God. I'm loved. I'm lovable. So it's as if you see the face of Christ in yourself. But now, the last time that, if you want to go back to Jesus of Nazareth, that most everybody saw Jesus of Nazareth, he was pretty ugly. He was on a cross, he was all beaten up, he was bleeding, had a crown of thorns. So, when you say, I look like a mess, that's Christ. That's Christ too. He didn't run from that kind of stuff. So, and if he had lived to be an old man, he would have been all wrinkled and so on and so forth. Would you say that's Christ? So, he died young. We are not trying to gratify this outside ego, if you will, that gazes on itself like Narcissus, looking at itself, never being fully satisfied. We get away from that. But that's probably why we tend to obsess. This is one of the things that you're going to lose as you get into a deeper prayer. You're going to lose that obsession with judging others. And why do we judge others? Because we're comparing and contrasting them with this outside stuff. Am I enough? I've worked hard to be enough. And so there's a tendency to put someone down because it makes me feel better. That's one of the things you let go of, this obsession with judging the behavior of other people. Does it say the behavior of other people is going to be acceptable? It might not be acceptable, but you stop going around judging them and comparing and contrasting. I'm not like that person. Well, maybe in that particular thing you're not like that person, but there may be some other things that is your thing. So we begin to let go of judging other people to make ourselves feel better about ourselves. That's different from noticing bad behavior and figuring out what's a loving way to be present to that person so they have the best chance of changing. That's very different than just judging and saying, I want nothing to do with them. And some people you can't change anyway. So you can have this vaulted self-importance or a wounded self that makes you judge others. And Francis of Assisi, he'd be one. Everybody knows Francis of Assisi. Francis of Assisi saw what he would call Christ in everyone. Did he see a Jew from Nazareth? No, he didn't see a Jew from Nazareth. He saw that divineness, the thing that he experienced when he was in prayer, he began to see in other people. And so he began to treat them differently. He began to treat animals differently. And we say now, in this cosmic Christ kind of theology that's going around, especially in Episcopal circles, I'm catching on a Roman Catholic, we're a little slow to it, but the sense of Christness is everywhere, it's in the universe, it's that we are our DNA is part of an exploding star, billions of years away, and so on and so forth. So basically, what we're getting a sense of is this divineness is everywhere throughout the universe, and so therefore it's all around us, but we can't see it because we're self-imploded on about our wounded self and so on and so forth. So Francis of Assisi sees a goodness in a human being that that human being doesn't even see. And his sense is if I act a certain way, it's their best chance of seeing their own goodness. Not only do I act a certain way with myself, but with them, with others. So we begin to love our neighbor. I mean, what we hear in the God, love your neighbor. In other words, when Jesus gave this, it was the end product. So the rich guy comes and says, you know, what am I supposed to do? And he says, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and body, and love your neighbor as yourself. Well, I hate myself, so that I'm not going to love my neighbor. But Jesus didn't say that, but he gave the guy the end product. But he didn't tell him how to get there any more than the teacher can tell you how to become a tap dancer because you asked, how do you tap dance, or something like that. So Jesus said, well, to people, he said, follow me. See what I do. Do what I do. Including go out into the desert at night and get away from everybody. And just spend some time with the alone, if you will. So we begin to love our neighbor because we notice the gaze of God upon ourselves is love, and we begin to see with the gaze of God. This is one of the things that's going to happen. And we're going to begin to lose fear about acting in a certain way. And we'll have a good sense of when to avoid things. And shame. Because when you're loved, when you see your true self and you're truly loved, you begin to say, but I failed. I've done many bad things, but I'm not debilitated by them anymore. I don't have to live in the shame of them. I can move on from them, and where I need to apologize, I can make apologies. I can say I'm sorry. I can be helpful and kind, but I don't live in shame and guilt, because that just paralyzes us. We don't live in fear. And we say, well, I don't remember letting go of fear when I was meditating. It begins to drop away, as if you will. It begins to melt away. It's the outer garments that imprison us. And I think what begins to happen with all this is what we'll see, especially initially when we're starting to change, is we'll have we'll have the thought, all right? The old thought comes up. I mean, something happens and you have the same old initial thought and feeling about it, all right? It comes up. Now, the old you that was the energy that drove you to act a certain way, or drove you to talk or relate in a certain way. Now what happens is you begin to get, I'll call it a space, a moment, if you will, before this energy takes over and you get a sort of second opinion, a second thought, a second energy. God is always a second opinion when we're in the nonsense of the false self. God is giving us a second opinion. We're in the nonsense of I'm no good, I'm full of shame and guilt, I'm a bad person, or you're a bad person. And then God's love is always a second opinion. Because the culture's opinion is we're no good, but if we buy this or do that or marry this or get that, we'll be good. So here you get a little bit of space and a new energy comes up. A new thought comes up. Well, it has to be more than a thought. It has to have some energy to it. It has to have some power to do something. I'll call it energy. We'll call it the divine. All right? Or the real you, the true self that was created by God in the image and likeness. And that little space allows you suddenly to get a second way of responding. And so you don't get controlled by this first thought and first energy. And you have just enough energy to do this. So your first thought is to act the same old way towards another person. And now you act differently. It won't happen all the time, but it'll happen sometime. And that's how you begin to shift from the old way, which was very debilitating, nasty, unkind, let's say, and now with this new way. It's moving from bad habits to good habits, or from vice to virtue. Vice is bad habits. It's just doing the same old over and over again, even if you don't want. So we begin to say, look at a situation and say, oh, those are bad people. And we move in. A lot of what this is being of service. We become useful, helpful. And why do we become helpful? Well, at first, we become helpful probably because we think it'll change you. But as you deepen your prayer life, you realize you became of service, not to change you, but to change this you. The results are not up to you. We begin to be loving and of service in the world to change ourselves. There was a saint, Teresa of Lisieux, I think, died, only lived to be 24. I can't believe it, 24. She had Alzheimer's. I said, I'm 3 times older than her. Maybe more than that. And I said, I don't got this yet. So she said, I love to change me. She says, I don't love to change other people. I can't change other people. That's not my job. But my job is to love them. Jesus loved a lot of people. They didn't change. So we are loving to change ourselves. We begin to do this. We get the wisdom. A lot of this was to change you, or to really just make me feel better in the mess of my life. And this is to make me a more loving person. Act lovingly and you'll be more loving, but the other person might not change. That changes the whole way that you are with the world around you. A lot of people burn out from trying to be helpful because nobody changes. It was an ego thing. I was doing it to make me feel good. Or I'll feel good if you feel good. Now, what is it? I know what my body temperature is by taking yours. You say, no, nobody would do that. Exactly. But that's what we do a lot of times. If you're okay, then I'm okay. But I can't be all right in my skin unless everybody around me. No, we can be loving, and we don't know how it's going to turn out. We just do the best we can. And this lets go of a lot of control issues and a lot of stuff about if I don't do this, you'll turn out this way, and so on and so forth, and blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of other influences working in people's lives besides your loving service. But you just do it. I don't think Jesus had many followers when he left. Matter of fact, even the followers he had weren't following him. So he left, pretty much looked like a failure. But then they remembered the way he was and the way he acted towards them. And then I think there was a more contemplative life, and they began to change. So really, the contemplative gaze, if you would, is Christ, the Christness of this power of the divine in the universe. Which is a little bit different than an idea of God. What we're letting go of is the idea of God. Because an idea of God, it puts God in a box. Because all ideas are boxes. They have edges to them. So God's an idea, and that idea of God has a place, has a home, and then we go from there. I want to get to that home, and so heaven's a place, and so on and so forth, and we begin to. We don't challenge this so much. Oh no, yeah, God said no, you can't. Well, don't have an idea. We just let it. We said this is not going to transform me. an idea of God. It's not. I believe in God, and I said, and why are you acting the way you act? Or somebody says, aren't you a good Jew? Aren't you a good Buddhist? Aren't you a good Christian? You're just. Why don't you do what the Buddha says? Well, you can't. Or you say, I'm doing what the Buddha says. So it's an idea. It's okay. Except when you get the transformation of yourself. So it's an impetus. It can be the beginnings. It can be the start. I mean, the faith in. Because if I'm just talking about the Christ power and Godness, and you say, I don't believe in God, well, this gets even more amorphous. But then I end up talking about what made you go from the way you were to the way you are, if you've been changing. It wasn't you, because you couldn't change. But now you're different. What made that? That's a power. That's an energy. That's the divine. Some people call it God. You can do that with a few people. But with a Christian, okay, they got the idea of God, but the idea of God has to begin to get translated into changing ourselves. So we actually begin to let go of the idea of God. So I can read some scriptural passages and so on and so forth, and then I can that helps me to get focused a little, stop thinking about what I'm going to eat later or do later, or an appointment I have, or something I'm going to teach, and then I just put the book aside. So the idea, the thought, the relationship, the talking to and listening to are all preliminaries. And then I just put the book aside. And sometimes in the middle of a sentence I put the book aside because I feel the urge or the energy just to be still. It says in the scripture, be still and know that I am God. I just feel an energy or an impetus to, why don't you stop reading? You don't need all this stuff, all these thoughts right now. I just like to be with you. And I said, who's saying that? And then I just put it down and I sit quietly. And sometimes I don't even time myself. If I don't have to do anything right later, I don't even put on a timer. So you have this sort of starter dogma, if you will, to get you going. But ultimately, it's a sense of nothing, but just a sense of nothing. No thing is what I mean by nothing. No thing is not nothing, but no one particular image. But it could be a very good feeling coming through us. Now, talking about this very good feeling, there's a lot of times, and I think I'll go back to the dancing thing, there's a lot of times when you're just not doing so well. I just can't get my feet to just do anything. What's the matter, feet? But I don't stop. I said, I'm going to put aside a half hour. I'm going to do some dancing or practice steps or whatever. I don't stop. I just say, okay, this is the way it is today. And sometimes I might say, oh, that's a little boring. But I have a long range goal. And short things, feelings, are just short things, feelings. And you read it in a lot of the books. You sometimes can be bored. And what we often say about that, or distracted. And what some people have said that makes sense to me is this is a relationship. Even though in the deeper meditation you may feel a sense of no one thing. In other words, the 20 minutes go by and you don't even know where the time went. So where was I? Well, you were sitting here, but and your mind's thinking, but you're taken to a depth, you don't even notice what your mind is thinking. But you were thinking, but you're not aware of it. That's what I mean. And then when the little alarm or whatever goes off, or the gong or something, you say, oh, wow. And you'll probably have a better day. But you didn't make that happen. That's a gift. Contemplation is a gift. You can meditate, but you cannot make yourself contemplate. That's a gift. So it's a relationship. There is an other. Even though the experience is of oneness, there is an other. I am God, but I am not God. And that other can sometimes say, I like this. Well, I'm in this unconditional love, says the other. How about you, Terry? You in them for unconditional love? No, I'm only here when I feel good. So sometimes I'm going to be bored. Well, think of any relationship that you've stayed in for a long time. Tell me there's no boredom? Please. You're delusional. So, of course there's boredom. But you realize, okay, I'm bored. I'm bored now. That's okay. I didn't do anything wrong. Stop blaming yourself. You don't have to fix your method. It's just the way it is, to see if you'll stay with it, to see how unconditional is your commitment to me, says God. Mine to you is unconditional. I'd like to get a little bit of that love too. So sometimes I'm going to bore you to death to see if you'll keep with it. And that's when most people drop out. Because they do the big heresy is, I do this to have a personal buzz. That's why they meditate, personal buzz. And they'll keep looking around from one spiritual tradition to another. They'll pray to rocks if they can get a personal buzz. They'll do whatever it is. So they'll go from one thing to the other. And you'll hear these people, they'll come in and they say, well, I did Hinduism, I did Buddhism, I was brought up as a Christian, and I did a nature worship thing, and I was with the Indians, and so I did sweat lodges, and I did yoga, and but it was all self-referential. It's all self-referential. I said, well, if that's the way you're going to be, this is not going to go well for you either. But we try to help them to realize what might be going on. So we make no judgments about the time we set aside. There's no judgments about it. It's just do it regularly, and over a period of time, your life will change. That is pretty much what I think will happen. Now, we have to recognize, okay, I'm going to take a break here, is this, we try to fit in to some structure with this stuff. We found a true self. God makes differences. Just look around the garden. Not every flower is the same. And some things aren't flowering at all. They're not supposed to. So God makes differences. All we're supposed to do is flower as we are, and not to worry about somebody else, and not to worry so much about fitting in. The big word that people use now, as we don't really learn to talk, is like. It's like. Someone said, well, it's like a restaurant. And I think to myself, okay, I may have an idea of a restaurant. It's like a restaurant, but it's not a restaurant. What is it? Well, they don't have enough vocabulary to kind of say what exactly it is. Or they say it's like a restaurant. It's a shortcut to get to the chase, whatever that is. But if you would never read a book in which every other word was like. So you realize that we're really lazy about the way we talk. But we're not like, we're just ourselves. And so to struggle to fit in is a waste of energy, but it takes a long time to realize. What we need to fit into is our own skin, not your skin, my skin. So there are differences. And as we get a sense of oneness with the world, that is a sense of we're all in this together. This Christ, the divine energy, the Christness is everywhere, would be what a Christian might say. I suppose the Buddha. But we are different in various ways. I mean, that's what makes the world so interesting. So when we pray, there are different prayers. And there are different prayers for different personalities. And there may be different prayers at different times. So I never say anything about the way another person prays. I never say, why are you doing all that piety? Why are you kneeling in front of that statue talking to it? And they say, well, I'm not really talking to the statue. I say, well, okay. But there are different prayers for different persons. So in my tradition, there's novenas, there's rosaries, there's all kinds of things. And there's centering prayer, and there's Lectio. and so on and so forth. What I find is a way of looking at this that might help people to shift from the goodness of the prayers that they're doing to something deeper, because I don't think it does much good to say that's a waste of time. And first of all, it's not a waste of time. It's kindling. We are made to be fire. And fire starts out with kindling. So any kind of prayer is the kindling. God help me. Or God find me a parking space. You know, oh, that's a terrible prayer. Well, you could have not said that prayer. Oh, I blessed myself coming over here. Well, I didn't. I forgot to. And then I made a wrong turn and went up to the next exit on the highway. Then I said, oh, God help me. So that's a prayer. That's kindling, okay? And then I came back and I found it in time. So God help me to not get lost and show up on time and so on and so forth. So it's all kindling. So any prayers that you say, think of it as kindling. It gets you away from saying, well, if I don't contemplate, I'm wasting my time. But no, each day you have to do what you need to do to get yourself into this more contemplative mode or deeper meditation mode, and it's all kindling. It just that you don't want to overwhelm yourself with kindling. So I see people that go on retreats, and they say, I'm going on a retreat, get me away from it all, I'm going to be quiet and still. Here's my 6 meditation books. I have to look at each meditation book. It takes about 40 minutes to look at each I said, why? So you begin to talk about, the letting go of what might have helped them to get started, picking and choosing. What you begin to get to is the meditation books, the daily readers and daily thoughts, are simply kindling, and at some point you get an urge. This is what I think starts to happen with the change. You get an urge to put the book down, be still, and you buy into that urge. We're so Western neurotic. Finish things, complete. So you have to do all your 6 so you can't meditate. So it took me a while to get away from that. I says, okay. Because I started thinking, yeah, but if I don't look at this book, it might have a great thought in it. He said, yeah, and you'll forget that thought in an hour. So let it be. All right, we're going to take a